Welcome back, boys and girls. I'm Sean, and this is Mountain's Garage YouTube channel. A few weeks ago, I did a long series of videos, extremely detailed, about building a race Turbo 400. In the beginning of the video, I was building two transmissions. The second one being for my 72 Nova Twin Turbo LS project. I've built 8 transmissions for that car. I've only bolted in one other one, number 7. And between the series of videos and now, I sold that transmission. So the Nova sits without a transmission. I stopped working on the one for the car because I didn't have the ATD hipster first and second gear start trans brake valve body. I have it on good authority that the brown truck's going to pull in any minute. I'm keeping an eye out for it and drop it off. The beauty of technology is even if I don't see him or her, they will send a notification to my phone by the time he gets to the end of the driveway. You gotta love technology. It somehow seems fitting that the transmission I'm assembling for the Nova is a total Frankenstein project built from used parts. Heavy duty used parts, but used nonetheless. The case itself was in the scrap pile for years, decades. Should have been thrown away. Hey, beauty is where you find it. So I'm going to continue on and assemble this thing, bolt it in, and we'll see how it works out. Just to bring you back up to speed, it's a 1972 Pontiac heavy duty case. Heavy duty with the Bellhousing ribs, which no longer do anything. Extra ribs down here, extra meat and aluminum everywhere. It's very much thicker than a regular Turbo 400 case. It's set for years and years with water in it. There's odd discolorations. I was able to clean the valve body surface, no problem. Water didn't affect that too bad. I had to drill out or weld nuts onto what was remaining of 12 of the 13 pan bolts. It was pretty rough, but we got it back together this far. I have a new Sonex linkage shaft. When we left off, we were waiting for the trans brake valve body to assemble the direct drum on up. Already installed in the transmission, I started with a Sonex no-walk case bushing roller thrust bearing kit. It comes with a larger bearing than you'd normally use, rollarizing the output of a Turbo 400. It fits over there, no walkout bushing. It comes with shims. Nice kit. You watched me install it with a cam bearing tool in the previous video. The angular cut lower gear unit I bought used. It's been machined for a roller bearing between the carriers. I installed an ATI output shaft, a 300M main shaft. It has a aluminum piston in the apply for the 5 intermediate clutches that a larger ID to fit the 36 element Pro Mod Sprag drum that I have, direct drum. I used a heavy duty snap ring and an FDI case saver. I seal that bolt through the case and Loctite both the nut on the outside and the small bolt here. That brings us up to speed. Now let's work on the rest of the parts. Here's a side-by-side comparison between the heavy-duty 34 element Sprag drum and the 36. Just the inner race is 300 thousandths bigger. The Sprag and outer race is correspondingly bigger. That's why you need larger ID intermediate clutches. I purchased the 36 element Sprag direct drum used, and it's steel. I wished it was aluminum, but hey, I'll take it. If you do spend the money for an aluminum drum, make sure it has a steel liner with a seals ride on the center support. They do come both ways. I hear the aluminum one wears really fast with a seals ride. It came with a piston, aluminum, cut to 600 thousandths. It's already a check ball drum. That's a check ball piston, which will work, including the bleed hole. But I've decided to cut a non-check ball piston because I happen to have a bunch of them at the moment. I'll save that for a different project or plug it or something. So I'm going to machine a piston and reassemble. When it passes over the voids, you can hear that it's kind of loud. I grabbed the piston in the chuck internally. We don't use that sealing surface anymore anyway, nor does it hurt it. And I measured to these spacers right here. These hold it up off the drum so oil can get behind the piston. So I measure, when I say 600, I'm measuring right here. It's a crazy year for mushrooms. These things are bigger than my feet. A flock of turkeys just walked through here. Tried to steal my pump. Out here painting it, letting it dry in the sun. They reintroduced turkeys to the state of Maine 15 or 20 years ago. They did a great job because there are flocks of them just coming through the yard. If you also listen, I'm getting serenaded by chipmunks. All my friends. The direct drum is ready to assemble. I'm just waiting for the other return springs that come with the transbrake valve body. These are transbrake springs as well, and they probably work fine, but why not use the ones that are coming any minute now on the delivery truck? I must be on the afternoon run today. I took the forward drum all apart. It's just like new. I wanted to make sure they left the center seal off the piston. Just like the direct, I want to use the entire piston. No modifications to the forward drum. You just leave the seal out and you get the whole piston instead of having to fill it up half at a time. This has 5 brand new tan clutches and steels. It came with the whole combo. It looks brand new. I'm going to run it like that. An odd combination to have 5 forward, 6 direct, 5 intermediate. But hey, there's no rules here. That's the way it's going to go together. The billet forward hub has a bearing on both sides, which is kind of rare. Typically the ones you buy, the Sonex with a bearing, the bearing is on this side, and there's still a thrust washer on the other side. This one has a bearing in both locations. That's kind of interesting. So that's all, excuse me, all assembled and ready to go. My favorite go-to pump bushing is usually the one-piece Durabond, made in the USA. They're only a couple bucks a piece. But I do have a few of these Sonex high-temp bronze. They're like 10 bucks, so they must be better. I'll give it a shot. Why not? And the forward drum has the 300M shaft with a much bigger spline into the drum. It has a hole drilled up the middle and the traditional, if you will, lubrication and return holes. So I'm going to run the front stator bushing in the pump. I thought about leaving it out because I do have a bush converter. I could run it either way, but I'm going to leave it in. Front pump seal choices. I had Taiwan, Mexico, Taiwan. So I went orange because it's pretty. My package did finally arrive last night at 7:15, but it's here now. It's early morning the next day. Let's take the 1+2 start valve body out of the box we're going to use. That'd be the 1A. And then the 2Bs are first gear lead brakes for future projects. Excellent packing. That's the decal, separator plate. Valve body's protected in foam. Parts bag. Nice stuff. The first thing I did was stick the decals on anything that won't move around the shop. Standard procedure. Second, I want to, and did, drive the 1/4-inch check ball down inside the fill hole that we don't need anymore. So you can see it down there. It taps right in, nice and solid. The trick is to not drop it in the pinhole. So I do that before I assemble the rest of the transmission, just like I did the other one. I don't want to make a mistake and have to take it back apart, so now that's done. And I've covered this before, but I like to take the apply piston for the rear band, just set it in there, and you can tell that's my full stroke right there. And you can watch it actually rotates the output. So same way I'm going to air test it, but it'll do the same thing. But I just want to make sure I don't have a lot of stroke, and this is all a feel thing. I've done enough of them that I've yet to have a problem with the pin being too short or too long. Now I'm going to put a new seal on it. I already put this on the belt sander. You can see how nice that came out. It only took about maybe 5 seconds. 3 or 4 touches on the sander. That should seal nice with a new gasket. With the ATD valve body, you leave off the accumulator piston and the spring in the rear servo. I installed and air checked it through that hole. Again, you can watch it rotate the output 1/8 of a turn at a time, not even. And while in this position, before I go any further, I want to make sure my modulator valve, now scheduling valve, works freely in its hole. I modified it per the instructions, polished it to a high luster, and now it is absolutely free in its bore. I put the 16 new return springs in the direct drum and installed the retaining plate and snap ring. Now I can install that in the case. The other day on eBay, I did see the factory handle that would allow you to load this up with clutches and still maneuver it in place, but I was too cheap to spend $50, so I'll put the clutches in afterwards so I can grab it, put it in. I wiggled in the direct and forward drums, and now I'm checking the end play. This pump has been machined. This also came with the whole, I bought the whole internals out of a transmission, so this has been machined for a bearing and a shim, and I'm just dry assembling it now with the bearing because this has Torrington bearings on both sides of the hub inside the forward. So there's not going to be a lot of end play. I'm much more comfortable without the shim. It goes together and spins, and you can maybe detect a little bit of end play, but it's not much. And to be honest, with all these Torrington bearings installed, I'm not sure it's supposed to have a whole lot. So I think at this point, if it goes in and spins freely, I'm good. So I'm going to assemble the pump with the pressure regulator spring that came with the trans brake and pop it in. My apologies go out to those on the space station passing high overhead about the torrent of bad words I just launched myself when I sent the boost valve across the shop while maneuvering it into place with the old valve spring compressor. It works great as long as you don't slip off the end and send it flying. So the instructions say, do not use the horseshoe shim. Use the spring provided. Done. I've also, like I normally do, it's going behind an LS. I've restricted the converter charge like we've done so many times. Lubed up the pump gears and the new bushing and seal. Standard procedure, gonna bolt it together and stick it in the case with Teflon seals. When assembling a regular transmission that still has the Bellhousing, you install the pump, start all the bolts by hand, and then slowly tighten them up. In this case, with the Bellhousing is going to be bolted on afterwards, I start a bolt in every hole, make sure everything's free and loose, and then use a couple of short 5/16 bolts just to make sure the pump's fully seated. And now I'll remove everything and install the Bellhousing. If you watched my rant a month or so ago, I was complaining about the fasteners and attaching systems for the different brand of Bellhousings. I got to give ATI credit. They provide a gasket, which I started using on all brands of Bellhousings. And they also give you a flange bolt, and they use the factory washer. So there's no sealer involved installing the ATI Bellhousing. They do say a drop of blue Loctite on every bolt. I'm going to drop it on. The fit was absolutely fantastic. It's what I've been dreaming about the entire time. I should have taken the hardware that came with the ATI Bellhousing out of the package, and it would have excluded that from my list of manufacturers I was complaining about because I don't want to use sealer installing it. So that just creates work down the road. So no sealer involved here. Goes on like a factory pump install almost, other than you're adding a Bellhousing. If I was to complain about the ATI, which I'm not, but I've said it before, it's so much smaller around here, there's nothing you can do about cutting the housing to make a pretty gap. It's just what it is because it's so much smaller in here. The other ones come out to the flange and beyond. So, not a problem. Onto the valve body. My valve body surface is flat. I know the center support bolt and the case saver bolt down through here are tight because I don't leave things loose for that reason. The valve body itself, I lubed and installed the manual valve. That works nice. You have to put this 1/2 inch beach ball between these walls. It shuttles back and forth. And you can grease it if you want to, but once you put the plate on, it's captive, as long as you don't separate these two when you flip it over. Onto the studs, line up the manual valve. That's all the moving parts there is. That is a pretty piece of machining. Even got the state of Wisconsin in there. A normal TH400 has a 1/4 inch bolt here, here, and here. And this would be for the solenoid over here, the kickdown solenoid, but this hole is drilled, so I go ahead and grab another 1/4 inch valve body bolt. So now we have 4 1/4 inch and the rest 5/16. Tighten them down. Simple. Let me dig up some filter equipment and install that. So I came up with a steel deep pan pickup tube, which is awesome. It does not have the locating wing, so you have to twist it this way to get it right. But if you sight down the filter, you need to line it up with the pan rail, otherwise it'll hit the pan on the way down. So that's pretty simple. My method for lining up the washers and spacer, which is all factory stuff, is I stick the filter on the tube and swing it out here, put everything on, and then swing it back over the valve body, holding it underneath, and thread it on there so it's not a big drama situation trying to line all that stuff up right there. No big deal. I had a long conversation with myself and decided that having 2 plastic speedometer gears at the speed I'm potentially going to run, 160 to 180 miles an hour, I've gotten rid of every other piece of plastic inside the transmission. Having those whirring around in there, they're probably going to break and just fall down anyway eventually. So I drove a cut plug in, and we'll have to run a GPS speedometer if we want a speedometer. That's the part number, inch and 15/16. That was a Baldwin filter part number for the high flow filter. This is my BTE roller tail housing. Has a roller bearing that I've greased. I have the matching strange hardened yoke made to run with a roller bearing down in there instead of a bushing. And 6 new bolts with a drop of Loctite going together. The BTE tail housing will take the quad ring that some 400s used and 4L80s use. But I just stocked up on tail housing gaskets, so I'm just going to put a gasket on it. I'm ready for the pan, and I bought the part number 4013, which is sold by JAGS, Transmission Specialties, and FTI, all under the same part number. You saw me put it on the other transmission. It's a beautiful pan. It was what I was going to use because the B&M that I really want is twice the money. But I found a deal on one. It'll be here Monday, they tell me. So I was going to go ahead and put the other pan on. However, the safety shield and the overflow tank, that all goes on at the same time using the pan bolts. So it's kind of a package as far as shimming and everything. So I'm going to wait until the pan shows up. Maybe it'll show up early because I actually want to put this in the car. But I also have the correct Hydroforce solenoid valve to do my dump valve installation. And I'll cover that also. So we got some more work to do to this baby, but she's almost ready to rock. So we're almost there with the new transmission for the 72 Nova. I'd like to get it installed before I put the 71 Nova underneath, thus making it more difficult. But hey, the 71 runs, and I can push it if I have to. So I've got a few more cords to strip. Each one has a story. I found this one interesting if you haven't noticed. This is a factory drain plug. I'm thinking it must be Humvee, but I have to look that up. I've never seen one in a civilian pickup anyway, so the only other application I can think of that might have that is a Humvee. So if you know that, let me know. If not, I'll have to fire up the old Google machine and figure it out. So thanks for following along. More content to come. Have a great day. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm gaining slowly. Here we are in September. I started the year excited that I had 1,000, and now I'm at 2,500-ish. So growing slowly, but we're projecting upward. Faster if you hit that subscribe button. Doesn't cost a thing, and it helps out everybody. Catch you next time. Take her easy.